My wife is so overprotective over our children that it's crumbling our marriage. As our daughter grew older, I tried to convince my wife Laura to go back to college and that we could send our daughter to daycare or ask one of the grandparents to babysit while she was at uni. She quickly shut down the idea, saying that our daughter was a toddler and now was a very important time for her since she will start retaining memories. She said there's no way she'll let her daughter get attached to someone else, as it was her responsibility to raise the baby and not anyone else's. I tried my best to convince her that her education was important. I told her that if someday, God forbid, something happened to me, she will need a degree to get some decent job so she can take care of our child and herself, or that she will be struggling to make ends meet. This seemed to get through her and she finally agreed to study, but that too was only an online course that she could study at home. She just had to write an exam at a test center as per requirement. When our daughter turned 3, we found out that my wife was pregnant again. It was the same thing all over again with baby number 2. She wouldn't leave the house much. The only people she really let be around her were me and her mother. Sometimes her sister too. She rarely left the house except for anything our child needed or if she had any exams she needed to take, and she was reluctant even to leave for those. I tried talking to her about it again, but she was never interested in addressing the issue of being so possessive. The baby was born and there she was all over again, never letting anyone other than me or extremely rarely even her mom around her and the kids. I remember seeing dark circles under her eyes and telling her there was no need for her to take on so much of the load by herself. That she could let me take at least a quarter of it when I'm home. She kept saying she didn't like the way anyone else handled things. Even our intimacy life took a big hit after our second baby because my wife was exhausted and drooping by the time she returned to bed. Sometimes she'd even get the kids to sleep in between us because she felt horrible making them sleep alone in another room. She stopped once she saw an article about a baby dying because of co-sleeping, after which she gave me a huge lecture to make sure that I would never do that. I literally had no intention anyway. I was desperate by this point, but as time went by, I learned to give in and just let her handle the children the way she wanted. Whatever she was doing, it was all anyway for the safety of our children, so I guessed it couldn't be too bad. Our kids grew up and I made sure to use protection always while having intimacy after that, much to her dismay. But at that point, I didn't care. Laura had calmed down a little since the kids got older and I in no way wanted it to go back to how it was with a new baby. Laura was still very involved and overly cautious of our children. She found work close to our house once our youngest was old enough for preschool. She would drop them both off at school before heading to work and pick them both up before returning. We have school buses on our route, but whenever I mention it she brings up the statistics of school bus accidents and bullying, saying it's not a good idea. Our oldest has a best friend and had asked us to let her sleep over at her friend's house, and my wife almost blew up at the request. My daughter cried all night and I had to cuddle her to sleep to comfort her and promise her loads of books to get her to stop crying. I had to convince her best friend's parents to let the sleepover be at our house instead. Our youngest is 5 now and my wife is pregnant again with our third child. She convinced me one night in the moment to nut inside her. Since my wife had calmed down relatively from before, I thought maybe as we got older, she's gotten a bit easier on herself and the children. Now the incident that freaked me out. Last week, while playing a sport in school, a random small boy in my daughter's class accidentally kicked a ball in our daughter's direction and hit her head. The teachers quickly took her to the hospital and she had to get stitches. Safe to say, my wife went ballistic. She got hysterical and started crying. Our daughter is okay and the stitches will heal in no time, but my wife is not taking it well. When the boy's parents visited us to formally apologize with their son, an 8-year-old boy who looked terrified off his wits, my wife went crazy angry at the parents. She started threatening to sue them for damages and get restraining orders. I have no idea where all that idea came from. The parents were shocked. I quickly apologized to them and sent them on their way. My wife kept rambling about suing them. She then talked about pulling the kids off school so she could homeschool them. According to her, that is the safest choice, plus with all the school click-clacking she's been hearing around the country. She kept going on and on about how school was unnecessary and dangerous. After that I did something I'm not proud of. I yelled at her. I was so mad and frustrated and annoyed. Years of pent-up frustration just poured out of me. I think for a moment I forgot she was even pregnant with my baby. She looked at me with teary eyes before getting up and walking away. It's been almost a week now and neither of us has taken the effort to apologize or speak to each other. The only communication we have is regarding the children. I am absolutely adamant about not pulling the kids out of school. They deserve to have a normal school life with friends and a typical growing up experience. I'm not about to take that away from them because my wife gets crazy protective over them. I don't know how to handle this. I'm already looking into therapy, but it's going to be a bit hard to convince her. Is there anything else I can do to get her relaxed over the children?